Next week's Austrian Grand Prix could be decisive in the World Championship outlook, especially for Ferrari, which needs to provide answers on a track similar to the Canadian circuit. Long straights, curbs, traction, and some fast sections characterize the Austrian layout. However, to get concrete answers, the SF-25 requires a solid and versatile rear end, something it currently lacks. In our analysis of this problematic Ferrari, we examine what will change in the rear suspension between new aerodynamic updates and how it will unlock the long-awaited potential. In recent weeks, rumors have spread about the underlying problems of the SF-25, the car competing in this year's Formula One championship. While some realized this late, others suspected the issue as early as the Australian Grand Prix at the Albert Park circuit in Melbourne. The car showed significant differences between Friday and Saturday sessions, when drivability worsened noticeably. Both telemetry data and visual observations showed the SF-25 single-seater exhibiting unexplained understeer, an abnormal and strangely fluctuating behavior that was already seen during the pre-season testing session at the Bahrain International Circuit. In fact, in the very first days of testing, the SF-25 alternated between understeer and oversteer in various runs. This almost suggests Ferrari was already aware of the rear suspension's limits and possibly some elements that influenced the design of Project 677. With the problem becoming public in recent weeks, the atmosphere inside the Ferrari racing department has drastically changed. Sources close to the Maranello team reported that team principal Frédéric Vasseur was extremely furious about the presence of a mole who leaked the main weaknesses of the SF-25. Since then, the environment within Maranello has experienced a slow escalation between those who want to remove him and those who want to keep him close. Among the latter are the two drivers who have blind faith in the French team principal's work. On the other hand, journalists close to Ferrari's press office have directly attacked the management of the Maranello team. However, there is someone at the factory working day and night to fix the rear suspension and correct the winter's mistakes. Loic Serra and the technical department have been working since the Melbourne weekend, with sources close to the Maranello team reporting work even before that on the new setup and internal components. The operation is proceeding at a fast pace with constant interaction between the aerodynamic and chassis departments. This has obviously slowed development but was necessary to avoid new issues on track. Regarding the debut, Ferrari appears undecided, although the arrival of a new floor specification for the Austrian Grand Prix is confirmed. This sounds slightly odd since the new floor is designed to work best with the updated rear suspension. According to what has been reported by the Italian media, the chassis department is keeping a very low profile and no one wants to commit to a timeline for its arrival. As highlighted in several analyses on our channel during the last few months, the SF-25 single-seater has suffered since the Saturday of the opening Grand Prix from obvious understeer at low speeds. This behavior, extremely damaging, is caused directly by the rear end. In fact, considering some vehicle dynamics fundamentals, rear behavior significantly influences the front end as well. Ferrari, which has been forced to take countermeasures in order to avoid excessive wear of the skid block, opted for a compromise setup. This choice prioritized stiffness at the expense of the rear suspension's elasticity and softness. An almost locked setup, which particularly compromised low-speed corners, where a softer car is needed for both turn-in and traction. The new specification, as mentioned earlier, expected to arrive at the Silverstone circuit but possibly at Austria as well, will introduce numerous changes. The first and most notable, having been passed multiple times between the aero and chassis departments, could be a new arrangement of the suspension arms. The main goal of the chassis team is to bring the center of gravity closer to the roll center, as McLaren chief designer Rob Marshall did with the impressive MCL-39 single-seater. This objective can be achieved by modifying primarily the position and angle of the suspension arms. Other changes, equally important and which will provide the biggest advantages, are internal and therefore not visible. The new suspension structure will feature new springs and dampers. Specifically, the work will focus on the heave damper and heave spring, respectively the damper and spring controlling vertical pitch motion. By working on a more progressive setup, the Ferrari engineers and technicians should finally be able to unlock the famous potential touted by team principal Frédéric Vasseur since the start of the 2025 Formula One Championship. Ferrari has hinted that a much-awaited upgrade could appear at Formula One's Austrian Grand Prix, but it will not cure the key issue where team boss Fred Vasseur says it failed massively again in Canada last weekend. Both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc have talked openly about the need for the team to deliver developments to its SF-25 car, as they feel it has reached the limit of its potential. There is an accepted view that Ferrari's 2025 car has a key weakness in not being able to run as close to the ground as the team would like in races because it risks wearing the plank down. This problem is especially amplified in tracks with high-speed corners, where the extra loads push it even closer to the track. As a result, one key upgrade that the Maranello team is believed to be working on is the revamped rear suspension, which could help the car better cope with the loads put through it in fast corners, and therefore allow it to run in a better ride height window. Ferrari boss Frédéric Vasseur has been reticent to offer any details about what the specific car weakness is, though, nor what changes are coming beyond that something is arriving soon. However, he has played down talk of any upgrade being critical to helping Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton deliver better results. That is because he is adamant Ferrari's main weakness right now is in not extracting everything it has from its car, which is something that will not be solved by developments. Speaking about Ferrari's update plan, Frédéric Vasseur stated that the team would introduce an upgrade soon, before the British Grand Prix, and potentially another one slightly later. He emphasized, however, that the key factor at the moment was less the car's potential, and more how well the team executed and extracted performance from it. Frédéric Vasseur noted that with the current regulations nearing the end of their cycle, any upgrades tended to bring gains measured in hundredths of a second rather than tenths. He pointed out that if the car was not used effectively, particularly if the setup was slightly off, it could result in a loss of tenths. The Ferrari team principal also acknowledged that on several occasions, including at Ferrari and other teams, upgrades had required 1 or 2 races before the car and setup were properly adapted to the new specifications. The French manager reiterated that the team's focus should remain on execution, as he believed there was more performance to gain from operational excellence than from raw car potential, though new developments would still be introduced. Fred Vasseur's idea that Ferrari is not optimizing its weekends was proven in Canada when it appeared to have a car capable of fighting for the podium but fell short. Some of this was in its own hands, like Charles Leclerc putting himself out for the day on Friday with a crash in first practice, or it perhaps not being bold enough to try the one stop that the Monégasque driver reckoned was viable on Sunday. But some of it was outside of its control, like Charles Leclerc hitting Isaac Hadjar's dirty air in Q3 to wreck his final qualifying lap, or Lewis Hamilton striking a groundhog early in the race that damaged his floor and cost him 20 points of downforce. As Fred Vasseur reflected, throwing away performance through bad execution is worth far more than any benefit car improvements can bring.